So we're going to have some fun with this session and really get into this idea of invest in success and being intentional with professional development for our facilities organizations, in particular for our staff, because our staff are really important. If Bill Paulus is in the room, raise your hand. Where is he? Bill Paulus said yesterday, yeah, there you go, Bill. You can't talk to me ever. So he's talking about we're in the people business. You don't build buildings without people. You don't maintain buildings without people. You need your people in the way that you manage them. It's so important. So I have my wonderful colleagues next to me. Jim Jackson is the ABC, University of Nebraska-Lincoln. Jim. Yes, and Margaret Tennessen is the Deputy Chief Facilities Officer at, hopefully I got that right, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, the flagship there as well. So these two folks are really awesome, and they're going to give you some great ideas about how to be more intentional about staff development. So I want to ask you, first question, are you and your institution the employer of choice? Are you? Is your institution the employer of choice? And if you think you are, do you know how? Do you know why? And that's going to be really important throughout the entirety of this session, is that you know whether you are or you aren't, and what are the things that you can do to really be different and to do what you need to do to be. So we're going to look at some polling questions here, all right? So you got a QR code. Here's our panel, and we don't care about that. Do you have a QR code that you're calling up or no? Yep, there we go. So you see it on the screen. So as you're doing that, I want to talk to you a minute. If you want to be the employer of choice, I want you to step back for a second. And in a recent Wall Street Journal article, it was dated September 25, 2023, very recent, it was titled, "Why America Has a Long-Term Labor Crisis." Now, they had identified a ton of trends: labor market pressures, lack of advanced technical skills, aging out. I sort of feel like aging out here. The stigma. They call it dirty jobs. These are awesome jobs, and we got to change that stigma. Low birth rates, industry competition, and changing worker preferences and changing worker expectations. These are coming to roost, whether we like it or not. But hey, there are numerous things that we can do and that we should do to up the retention ante. I hope you agree with that. So we're going to look at this topic, the issues, the challenges from several angles, folks, and we're going to ultimately center on the benefits and the return on investment that professional development brings as a huge staff retention opportunity. Now, if you don't know Margaret Heffernan, she's out of the UK. Look at her TED Talk. She's doing some amazing stuff around human skills, etc. But Margaret Heffernan says, we're in the midst of radical uncertainty. Yeah, radical uncertainty. But folks, I'm looking at all of you. You've never shied away from anything. You've always leaned into it. Look at the pandemic. We weren't ready for that. Nobody. But what looks to be insurmountable doesn't have to be. How many were you at the opening with Ryan Holiday? Raise your hand. Yeah, you're going to participate, so get a grip. All right, so yeah, Ryan Holiday had a really great opener, and he talked to us about we can choose how we see the situation. So even if you think this is insurmountable with all the things I'm telling you, it's not, because we can see the situation differently. So let's do this. Let's look at this first polling question. I want to get a sense of where you are collectively. Are you intentionally investing or deferring staff training and development? You have three choices on the screen. And technically, A is intentional investments, B is deferring investments, and C is you don't know. Can you enter those on your poll?
You're good.
Is it going? Yeah.
It's going.
There you go. No, I can't see it. Look at that deferring. Look at how many of you are investing. You folks are awesome. You're doing some really, really wonderful things. Now I really want to challenge you about this. If you don't know, I want you to go back and find out. Figure out why. Why do you not know? Okay, so the next one I want to look at. What percentage of the total budget are you spending? This is about your spend rate. How much are you investing in it? How much are you spending? So you've got some choices here. 1, 2, 3 to 4, 5, or again, you don't know. Okay, lots of don't knows. 1%. Who's my 5%? Who are the 5%ers? Raise your hand. Come on. Awesome. Where are you from? Where? Okay, good, excellent. Anybody else? You need to talk to that guy. Okay, he's doing some amazing things. The industry, corporate America says it should be 5%. Now, whether you're doing that or not, and I know all the issues around it, but it's really, really important. So let's take a look at our last polling question. And this is a word cloud. And so when you think about a word cloud, if you have more than one word, make sure you don't leave a space. Otherwise it gets disconnected. So tell me here, what are the perceived barriers to making an investment? Put in your words. Funding always comes up. Come on. What else? Oh, look at that, time. What do you think, folks? I don't know that I would have ever come up with that one necessarily. Time. Time is the biggest one. Keep doing it. More. You can add more. Come on, you can add more than once. Anybody? Barriers. Barriers. So budget, funding, and the time. Time given to do this is difficult to step away. I know in Bill Paulus's session yesterday, he talked about how you're measuring your success and what are the specific things that you're doing to make sure that you're providing the kind of voice to these issues. And the time makes a huge difference. All right, let's keep going. So as we have a discussion question that I want to get to right now. Yeah, these are not surprising at all. So let's take a look. So I'm going to start with Jim. That's okay with you, Jim? Well, I want to ask Jim that what is or was your experience pre to post pandemic, and how you felt about that, the concerning needs for staff, and how did that shift? How did the challenges shift even, and how do they remain? Okay?
Sure.
Okay.
So pre-COVID, I've been in facilities upwards of 23 years now. And one of the things that we worked really hard on as a facilities group was getting a seat at the table. And it many times a lot of decisions about buildings, a lot of decisions about process and spend and what we're doing. A lot of those decisions were made not including the subject matter experts in what we do. And right about the time everybody started going into their, let's say, new way of doing things during the pandemic is when our team first experienced a true seat at the table. And we're talking with chancellors and presidents and other high-ranking senior level officials. And so during that time, we were asked what are we gonna do? How are we gonna handle this? How are we gonna get through that? And so we just didn't panic. We didn't do anything. We just did. And we are a very proactive, preventive organization. We don't necessarily like to be a reactive organization. That all changed really, really fast for us. We became reactive and just started going, whether it was procuring supplies, masks, hand sanitizer, you name it. We did everything we could to do that. The one thing that I noticed as in my career there, it's been a long time doing stuff, but it used to be that you had to give guidance and you had to kind of set the stage for things and drop ideas, and somebody has to come up with a strategy. And what really happened is the people that we invested in intentionally invested in over the last 12, 15 years when we started first sending them to professional development opportunities and others. Those were the people that just were ready. They didn't have to be told what to do. They didn't have to be nudged. They just stepped in and kind of took over the campus and the institute. And not only did they work at the level that they were at, but we had people within our custodial, our maintenance department that are working directly with vice chancellors, working with, you know, just senior leaders at the campus. And that's never happened before. It just, you know, there was a hierarchy in place, and you could tell during that time, that period, the people that we invested in were ready. I mean, literally ready to go out and step up and take care of anything and everything, and even through communications and email, and they just had the confidence to take their training, development, and other experiences and sit at the table with anybody and everybody. And it wasn't just at the University of Nebraska. We dealt with the health DHH, the Health and Human HHS, actually Health and Human Services in the Lancaster County, and we helped guide them through a lot of different things. So one of the biggest things that I noticed that happened to us is, number one, you could see that return. You could see all the people that had been through training adjust and adapt. And you could also see that they were able to function at a very high level in an unstable environment. There was no stability. We're always looking, you know, at budget cuts and reductions and different things like that. But at that time, those individuals were able to step up. But on the backside of it, coming out of it, which we still are coming out of it, reverting back to being a proactive, predictive organization, it's hard to get there, right? I mean, we're so used to just really being cowboys and going out there and taking care of everything, and whatever happens, money's no problem at this point in time. Well, our HERF dollars have dried up and everything's gone away. And so one of the things that leading into being intentional and investing in your staff is understanding that long term we've had expectations of our staff. And we have this certain level of, whether you work by service levels and or just, you know, your workload and how that all works. But what we noticed is our employees now have expectations, and it's kind of flipped on us, and it's taken some getting used to. But when you step into this world now and you have employees, frontline employees, that have expectations of their leadership, of how we operate, you have to really align yourself to make that, number one, let them be heard, and number two, adjust on the fly. And I real quick example, and I'm watching the clock, so I don't know how long they're going to let me talk, but you know, we had a policy in place on custodial, and it outdates me, but you know, you couldn't talk on your phone unless you were on break, and if you did, you know, it was an automatic kind of write-up for you, and you were set up to take your breaks at 10 o'clock and half-hour lunch and then your break, and that seemed very inefficient to me. And so I asked the director of custodial to fix that. And it just totally empowered our custodians. And we still have problems and people getting used to that. But when we switch that empowerment over to them, to let them make their decisions, So all we want is the work done, right? Let's get the work done. And so allowing them to make those decisions has really increased our productivity and our morale in custodial. However, we've got a level of leadership in there that's been around a while that doesn't like it. They don't like giving that autonomy to our staff because it makes it harder for them to be supervisors. And so when you stop and think about what that means, I mean, there's a whole level of learning, and there's a process, and there's dominoes that fall all the way down. And when you're trying to empower an organization, you really got to look at not only your vision and expectations that you set, you kind of got to start from the top and the bottom at the same time. You got to push that up together and let the stuff squeeze out that's in the middle and fix that. And so it's been an interesting time for us. And again, we're relearning what we used to do and how we do things, and things are different now. But the key point is expectations, and everybody else has them too, including your customers, your stakeholders. I mean, the taxpayers, all the way through. Being a land-grant university, as my colleague here can attest, the government can get involved in what you do and how you do that. And so it's been a real interesting time for the University of Nebraska to not only regroup and become somewhat efficient again, but it's also just telling our story and showing that we do have this. And I really attribute our success to training and professional development for our supervisors and managers. And we'll get into invest in success and why we started that and working on that. But that's kind of where it's at.
It's really good. And I think hearing Jim talk about this, it shows the kind of learning organization that he has created. And that's what you're trying to do throughout this whole thing. And it's amazing to me the amount of trust that you're building at every level. But that's hard with those supervisors who don't want to change that. So you're always surprised about, what do you mean? I thought I was helping you. So it's really quite interesting what you've been doing to change those expectations and create that kind of environment and allow people to have that contribution that they might not have otherwise had. And that's truly part of that. Second part is the value of their contributions, and you're seeing that, you're noting it, and we're gonna home in on more of that in a little bit. Margaret, you want to talk about this as well?
Yeah, thank you. And I would first of all kind of echo what Jim said. I think our folks were amazing in the pandemic. They were adaptable. I like to say, when everybody else went home, we were the essential employees who stayed. Even at a time, in the very early days when people were scared to be, they were scared for themselves and for their families, and just amazing. I think what we're seeing at Wisconsin as folks are coming out of the pandemic, frankly, is that people are burned out. Folks have had a lot of stresses. In some cases, folks lost family members, are dealing with all kinds of pressures on multiple fronts. And if I'm brutally honest, we're seeing more conflict in the workplace. We're seeing folks that are, really struggling. Talked with some people here yesterday about the conflicts we're seeing between employees who have the flexibility to be able to work remotely, there is this perceived, and I think probably actual inequity that exists between folks who can work from anywhere and who don't have to get up and commute in and don't incur those expenses. At Wisconsin, we pay to park our vehicles on campus, and it's not cheap. And so we're starting to see resentment building up between those folks who have that flexibility and people who cannot do their jobs without coming to campus. And so I think lots of really good things, but at the same time, all of the good things Jim was talking about. But we've got employees right now who have gone from being essential to feeling undervalued. And so, that's manifesting in people saying, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm starting to look for something else. I've had it, I'm done. And so I think that's, kind of where we've said professional development and thinking differently about how we support our employees is just so really important as we're coming into this new time post-COVID.
Such a great story around what is happening at both of these institutions, and I'm sure that many of you have similar stories. But it's good to hear, Margaret, that you know this and that you're identifying with. How many have the haves and the have-nots when it comes to the remote? Raise your hand. Lots of folks. This is clearly an issue that we'll have to deal with in terms of how we have a conversation and how we discuss. The folks that are working at home, quote, aren't necessarily as blessed as you might think they are. So it's just different. And if you can start that conversation, I think it's great. It's a really good point. So we're going to take a look at some slides here, that couple in the beginning part here, that speak to some research that was done by my colleagues at CUPA HR, the college and university HR professionals. They got a heck of a lot of good data on the issue, and I think it really does illuminate where the two of you were going here. The first one here that you have on the screen is turnover challenges. And now they did it for faculty and staff. We're going to home in on that middle element of focusing on full-time staff and full-time exempt and non-exempt staff. Frankly, we held our own during the pandemic. I think all of you would agree with that. That first year of the pandemic, we got through that. But when it came to voluntary turnover, the last 2 years have significantly upward. They've gone way up and increased. Look at the data on here. If you cannot see it, 17.6% is the turnover rate for exempt full-time. That's a big number. And then add 19.7 up for the same group of non-exempt full-time. So I ask you, what is your turnover rate? Now you could tell me they're different for different parts of your organization. That's fine, but you ought to know what your turnover rate is because then you know what your challenges are. Let's look at another one here. This is back to what two of you were talking about in terms of people are feeling burnout and things are happening in terms of the likelihood that I would look for other opportunities. Look at that. If you see the dark red, that middle bright red, and then orange, and you look at that count, that's over 50% of facilities employees have a likelihood or very likely to look for another job. That's a heck of a lot of people. But what you don't see in this slide is the following information. It's around age. The likelihood is that younger employees, less than 45 years old, are looking. So there are a greater number of those. And add to that, they're men and people of color. So this is a significant issue and ways of thinking about what's going on in facilities and what's happening specifically. Yet, get this, they're not looking to flee higher education. Now that's sort of an interesting twist, so think about it, because we're going to explore that in a little bit more. So there's some things that we can do about this. So I want to go to another question set, and Margaret, I'm going to start with you on this one. Here we go. So the question is, how does a sense of belonging play into employee retention? So this gives you a way of thinking about your story and what you're doing when it comes to that burnout. So talk to me about sense of belonging.
Yeah, thanks, Lander. So, I think one of the things that is probably true for almost all of us here in the room is that when we look at just compensation alone, we're really not in a position to be able to compete with the private sector, right? So, we offer, I think, some other really valuable things, work-life balance and being affiliated with a mission-based organization. We're able to do those kinds of things. Organizational culture, strong leadership, having, a sense that for an employee that my organization cares about me, is going to invest in me, and is, someone is taking the time to to sit down and think about what's my career path, what are my opportunities long term. I think those are the kinds of things that where we're able to compete.
Good.
Because pay alone, we're just never going to get there.
Nope. And there, you're going to see something interesting in some of the stats here about whether pay has as much of a significant impact on whether people stay or not. And so, Margaret, did you see an issue around the supervisor's role at your institution?
Yeah, so, similar to what Jim was talking about earlier, supervisors are probably the most significant players in terms of our employee retention. A really good supervisor can, motivate someone to want to stay for a really long time. And conversely, if you've got a supervisor who is not paying attention, doesn't take the time to, just ask about how you're doing or acknowledge the good work that's going on. I think all of us recognize, or well, we all have things going on in our lives, right? And I think we can probably tell stories about that good supervisor who took the time to care about us, to, not only, make sure we were getting the job done, but learn about, what matters to us, or, ask about what are those challenges we're facing. And so I can't say enough about how important supervisors are in all
So
of
it's
this.
interesting, I believe it was the Gallup poll. Gallup poll, and I quote what they found, is that they said a supervisor or a manager has more impact on employees' health and wellness than their doctor or therapist. Sometimes don't you feel like the doctor or therapist? My word, that's insane, but it's true. Jim, do you want to chime in on sense of belonging and the supervisor's role? Because I think you have some interesting angles to this too.
So we kind of live by the theme at our institution that every person and every interaction matters. And so when we go through our job is to provide a safe environment and a place of belonging and a place where employees want to go and not kick their dog on the way out the door, on their way to work and stuff. And so it's really critical that we're aware of the environment that our staff works in, and we provide them with that, not only a place of belonging, but a safe place, and that we're approachable. And I've battled this my whole career, and I finally have come close to winning the battle. But every time we deal with an employee relation issue, HR always looks at you and says, well, what have we done in the past and why? And so I'll just yell louder. So for us, we said we don't want to know what precedence is anymore. All precedence has been thrown out the window, and we want to continue to deal with individuals as individuals and treat all situations on an individual basis, because there's so many different circumstances that we're not aware of, whether they're have a sick child, whether they're taking over care of their parents, or you just name it. There's a multitude of challenges that as an employer, we're not really going to know that. And instead of focusing directly and reacting to behavior or something that they did wrong, being late, whatever that could be, we take the time now to sit down and ask, hey, what's going on? And how can we help you? And the investment we have in these employees are just amazingly huge. I mean, to get one person through a 6-month probation period and bring them out the other side successful. So one of the things that we did is we hired a people operations person. And just one of the best things we've ever done. This person that works for us now has 2 staff members, and their job is people. That's their title too, people operations. And they walk people from the beginning, onboard them all the way through, whether it's talking about benefits, talking about other issues in their lives, whatever it is. They're not employee relations. That's a different part of what we do. These people are in place to support not only the people that we hire and work there, but all the directors. I think I've got 13 or 14 direct reports at the director level or executive directors, and consistency in what we do has just really been amazing. And the only way were able to do that was put somebody in charge of people and making sure that their experience is a good one, a consistent one, and they're not having to talk to somebody else and says, well, you were onboarded with this, and I don't even know what you're talking about over here. And so our directors and all of our units are very consistent, and we're still a work in progress. But if you can, no different than Lander was talking about the budget for professional development, pull some of that budget out and get somebody in there to take care of your people too. And that's a priority to us. And I've been one of those people that has had major budget reductions throughout my career, but we've never cut our professional development budget. And we've now invested in our people operations. And I told Gabe I wouldn't mention his name, but he, I mean, he's been part of this, and he has watched it just become a complete success story. And we have a rock star working for us, and that's what she does, is she takes care of people and just guides them, and not so much holds their hand, but just gets them to the finish line. And then by that time, they're empowered to make their own decisions of how successful they want to be and how long they want to work here and how they're going to contribute in our organization. And so there's investments that are very small. Most of us have, budgets in the millions, right? And for me, we've got the second highest budget at UNL, sitting right in my organization. And we can find money to do that. And there may be things we don't do. We may defer some maintenance projects. We may defer certain aesthetic things, but we take that money and put it back into the people and the support for those people.
I think it's incredible what these two are doing to truly invest. And I hope you're picking up on the elements, the little things that they're doing that build to creating the employers of choice at their institutions and a workplace environment that people don't want to go somewhere else. Doesn't mean that people won't, for heaven's sakes, but that they don't really want to, because you don't want people looking. That's great.
Yeah, and it's interesting for us, the people that have resigned and taken jobs elsewhere and came back. I mean, and I'm not talking about frontline staff. I'm talking about high-level managers and people that are very smart and could go, make 40% more salary, and they've left for 40% more money on top of a six-figure job, and they come back because they do want to work here and they want to work with the team. And so it's interesting how many people leave and then come back. And we've even had one gentleman just leave here a while back, and he was back before we were able to post his position. So, I mean, that's that really makes you feel good, and you learn from those people why they came back, and it's a good feeling because they like their environment, they like their leaders, they like their coworkers. And I remember way back in the day when we used to do those Gallup polls, and the one question on there is, do you have a best friend at work? And everybody thought I was like the dumbest thing they ever heard. Why would you ask that? And it turns out that it does matter because most of my friends are from work. And so it is really a place that I want to be. Not for very much longer, but I do want to be there. So.
Talk about aging out, right?
You remember this is being recorded. Yes?
Okay.
Yeah, don't say that too loud. You know, I'm struck by a couple of things they're talking about here. It goes back to your word cloud, where you said time. Do you remember on that word cloud that time was the biggest barrier? Maybe you want to rethink whether time is truly the biggest barrier. That's the only thing we all have the same of. I don't have the same budget as someone else. You don't. But time, how you spend your time and the ways in which you set priorities for your folks makes a huge difference. You can pull that lever no matter what. I'm also reminded of Margaret Heffernan, again with that woman, she's amazing. But she was doing a TED Talk, and she talked about, she had asked older CEOs, whatever, this is on the corporate side, and she asked them, you know, when you are in the grips of it, like the worst possible situations that you're in the middle of, and you were just felt like it was all going in the toilet. She said, what did you do? Who did you turn to? And to a person, they said, my colleagues and my friends at work. She asked younger folks the same question, and they didn't have an answer. They didn't know. They didn't see the value. They were too busy. Don't be too busy. You have people in this room. I'm looking at one that I turned to, Dan Bowman, right here. Adam Lover, where is he? Yeah, these folks are amazing, and they help lift you up. So get those cards, make those friends, do that, because it makes a huge difference. Each and every one of us has more stories than we want to tell about being lifted up by someone else. It's really important. All right, I'm going to go to some stats here. So, some more. What are the reasons that employees are seeking? Now, this is back to those very likely, or somewhat likelies. They had an opportunity to pick the top 3 reasons why. Well, obviously, salary's always at the top, right? Come on, get a grip. It is what it is. But look at what remote work opportunities. I know that's difficult in the facilities environment, but flexibility isn't. You can do some things differently. Look at that, 44% and 32%. And then 36% said, if you give me promotional opportunity or more responsibility, I'm wanting to be here. Remember I said earlier, people don't really want to flee higher education. So that's a really good thing. And then, so we have some levers to pull, right? But look at that one toward the bottom. Did you catch the 21% want a new supervisor? I guess I'm being called out now. But there's a bigger story there, bigger story. All right, let's go to a second one. Satisfaction with the higher ed work environment. They may not be satisfied as much with their job. I mean, it's sort of a mixed review here. But when you get specific, look at the next 2. When you get specific, and Margaret, you said it, they have a good relationship with their supervisor and their work has purpose and meaning. I stayed where I am because higher ed has meaning. Education has meaning. Who wants to go work and make a ton of money that doesn't have any meaning or purpose? You can do that at your institutions. Margaret, you mentioned that specifically. Awesome. So the areas of discontent I do want to highlight here. Can't raise problems or an issue at work? You're solving that, even with your supervisors. Yeah. And then lack a sense of belonging, not recognized for contributions. Come on, folks, we can do this. Recognize folks, it means something. Call them by their name. Everybody's name is unique, especially mine. Minnie Mouse, I don't know. Lantern. Yeah, it's different, right? But it's my name. And when I'm called by my name, there's something different about that feeling. So we can impact these things. Now remember, the Great Resignation, the Great Reshuffle, the Great retirements, and not so great, all of this stuff. But it's a big concern around voice, being heard. I know you're concerned about my voice, but being heard is really, really important. And professional development and career pathways, those were the two reasons people moved. They left, because they just couldn't get a grip on it. So we can. So how would you, as the employer of choice, rate those elements? What would you do? How are you thinking about them? Think differently. Okay, so my final stats here, and these are sort of the bubble cloud here. I want you to identify first, in this predictors of retention, the two orange circles. Anybody have been overworked? Raise your hand. Dan, get it up. Yeah, all of you have been overworked. Your people are overworked. And Margaret, you called it out. Burnout is an issue. We have to get our hands around this. Increased demands, 24/7 expectations, you know this. And it hasn't let up that I know of in your environments. So it's really important because that hugely impacts whether you're going to stay and be retained or not. But look at that big blue bubble. I love that big blue bubble because that big blue bubble is talking about, isn't about folks seeking pay increases. The data says that receiving recognition, being valued, and having a sense of belonging are far more important than that whole salary element. So the workplace environment matters. Now I'm going to give you another reference here. Just released report from Gartner. And I quote, staff who report being energized and excited. Am I energized or excited? I don't know. I'm always energized or excited, am I not? I told them, if I'm never not energized or excited, I need to leave. I need to be done. So I am. But they report that they're energized and excited about their work. They're 31% more likely to stay. They're 31% more likely to go above and beyond. Think about this, folks. And they're 15% more likely to contribute more. You're seeing that. You're seeing that. Come on. It's a huge return on investment. Get invested in your people. Now, Margaret, I want to start with you here, okay? And we're gonna home in on something that's really near and dear to your heart. And it's about these human or soft skills or essential skills, whatever you want to call it. I call it human skills, and I think you like that too. So talk to me about the importance of that, both to the employees, as opposed to we get so caught up in the technical or hard skills that we focus too much of our effort there. So talk to me about the human skills.
Yeah, and thank you. And I always, when I talk about this, want to first acknowledge how important technical expertise is in our industry, right? One of the things that I think is most exciting about working in facilities is that there is this really deep and amazing technical knowledge, right? But at the same time, what we've started to call human skills, the things, the kind of skills that help us to get along with one another in the workplace, that help us to have difficult conversations, that give us the tools to manage through conflict. If I'm a supervisor, to know how to listen better and to take time to do the things that we've been talking about, communication, listen, acknowledge, and show recognition. You know, I think all of those things are so exciting. So, and so very important.
Yeah.
And in a minute, I want to talk about a program that Jim and I and some others have piloted, but maybe want to say a little bit about this first.
Yeah, in these words, did everybody have a chance to put up some words that you consider human or soft essential skills? Communication always comes up as the first top one, always. But you know what I'm seeing more and more, because I've done a number of these, and over a trending is that word empathy. I'm seeing that way more than I ever saw before. And listening is, how many of you have had listening classes or courses? Raise your hand. Not many. Folks, listening is, it's not just an art. There's a skill to really listening. So you think about how you listen, whether you're really hearing it or whether you're getting ready to talk, you're getting ready to say something. You know how that goes. So listening's really important. But I love the things that you put: empathy and ethics. You put listening, get along, show up, adaptability, emotional intelligence. These are all things that are part of the human skills. And I'm going to suggest to you that technical skills, they are super important, especially in this field. But they are transient. They move, they change, they flip a little too fast, right? A little too fast. However, these are skills for life. Human skills will get people through things that they never thought they could before. Give them those skills for life. So important. All right. So, do you find that the skills are valued at your institution?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Good.
And maybe just take a few minutes here to talk about this
Good.
new program that is called Invest in Success, and actually have a couple of photos to share from this. But this is a program that, and I want full transparency. I don't take any credit for it. This is a program that was started at Jim's institution.
Yep.
In partnership with a woman named Michelle Frederick, who works at American University. It's called Invest in Success, and it is a professional development opportunity for primarily frontline employees. So folks who don't necessarily have the same opportunities that we do to get out and travel and go to conferences. These are folks that maybe haven't had that in-depth development opportunity. And so Invest in Success is a low-cost program that we've offered at our institution now 3 times. And it is really focused on those human skills that we were talking about earlier. So, I don't need to repeat all of them, but this is all about emotional intelligence, understanding our biases, strengthening our communication skills. And when we've offered this at Wisconsin now 3 times, we put it out to anyone in the organization. So we've had everyone from custodians and parking enforcement officers. We've had tradespeople. We've had our project managers. It's really interesting. We've had no trouble filling these classes. We're continuing to offer them, and we get really wonderful, diverse mixes of people in a room together. And just a couple of quick things to share. So one of the things we do at the beginning is we ask people, well, why'd you sign up? And lots of good reasons. People will say, gosh, I want to get ahead in my career, or I want to understand how to have a better conversation with my coworker. One anecdote I always enjoy sharing is, we're going around the room the first time, and one of our trades employees just so candidly said, I just want to use the F word less at work. And, so our folks are candid about, why they're there. I want to be a better coworker, right? So,
Awesome.
And the thing I'll say just real briefly is that the results from this have been phenomenal. So 100% of the people who have gone through the class at Wisconsin have said, this is great. I would absolutely recommend it to a coworker. We've had groups say, can we keep meeting? Is it okay if we get together again in a month or 2? Because it's been really helpful to talk to people about the things that I'm struggling with in the workplace.
The bonds that you're creating through this, the confidence that people are gaining by going through this, the fact that you've invested in folks who never had that opportunity, and make sure you talk to Margaret. They had an application process, and they had to sort of turn away and such. I mean, that was pretty cool that you had so many people and you knew you could do it again and again and again, which was really very interesting. So did you want to mention something about the Invest in Success, or would you like to move to the career ladder?
We can just keep moving. I just think that it's been really great we've got another one coming up, I think, in December. And our staff really appreciates the opportunity to be included in the development, and it definitely is fun. But special thanks to Michelle, who we had the idea, and she wrote the curriculum for it, and she's very good at that. So
she's amazing.
Yeah.
Excellent. So Jim, I think it trails nicely to this question about a career pathway, or what you call a career ladder for your staff. It's something that you did different, I think, than I had heard, and that maybe it's a nice takeaway for folks.
Yeah, so we have worked really hard. We've had our battles with human resources, and when it comes to rewarding people for certifications and just getting better at their jobs. And so we've created pretty much across all of our trades something we call career ladders. And I'll summarize it real quick, but basically, like in custodial or maintenance and most in grounds, if you hit a certain level and can complete these areas and certain tasks, you'll automatically get a raise, and so it's predetermined and signed off with human resources. So our supervisors literally can give one of their people a raise without going through HR. I mean,
Cool.
everything's predetermined, and you just have to meet a certain level. And even the utility plant, and a lot of people that work with Gabe, electricians, when they get their journeyman license, they'll automatically get a bump. Any certifications, we've got it in environmental health and safety. If they go from just collecting hazardous waste to then being able to monitor radiation or lasers. And so there's a clear pathway for people to look at what they could be doing and what their career could look like if they want to put in the effort. And we find people who are pretty just content where they're at. And there's others that really battle to get to that next level. And it aligns with Invest in Success, because that's also a tool we use to let them experience potential leadership and where they could go with that. And if they go through Invest in Success and they do that well and want to go on, then we'll send them to Supervisor's Toolkit and just keep going. So it kind of piles on their opportunities and just opens the door in many different ways for our staff.
That's really great. And that's something different that I had not heard before, these career ladders. I had an opportunity to speak to 1,000 Coupa HR professionals, and they want to work with you on the HR side. Now, some of you are going, no, they don't. No, they don't. They do. They do. They have rules and requirements, et cetera, too, that they do want to try to figure out how to streamline these things. And I think you've gotten some very cool ways to do that. Okay.
Definitely streamlined.
Yeah, it's huge. So as you think about just for yourself, we won't talk about this given our time, but I want you to think about, how are you investing in yourself? Who motivates the motivator? You're the motivator. And one answer is you came to this program, not ours, but to HEFF. You're doing things for yourself. And I think that's really, really important, is that you're investing in yourself, because people will look to you. They're going to look at you. They're going to see how you are responding. How are you responding? How is she responding? Each and every one of you in the room. So it's very important. So just give us one or a takeaway that you think. Jim, you want to give a takeaway, and then Margaret.
I'll let Margaret go first.
Margaret, you're going to go first. Give us a takeaway.
Yeah. So, I think quickly, couple of things I would say. Every person in our organizations deserve a professional development plan, right? To Jim's point, every person, every interaction matters. I think every person deserves a professional development plan. And I do think, kind of going back to our responsibility as leaders is to make sure that happens. It's important for them, but I think it also, just it pays off dividends in terms of benefits to our organization, and creating that, being that employer of choice, creating that organizational culture that makes people want to stay.
That's excellent. Jim, takeaway?
I even had some conversations last night, and one of the things, I got a couple minutes here or less, but I lost a
Well,
kid. My daughter passed away 10 years ago. And when that happened, it was pretty devastating to me and my family. And it's, this is a place in my institution that really helped me through this. Lander was right there with me, you know, and so I learned a lot from that. I learned a lot about consistency and being predictable. As leaders, we need to be predictable, and people that work with me know who I am. I'm who I am when I wake up in the morning, and I'm who I am when I go home. I don't behave different at work than I do at home. I do stupider things at home, but really, I have found the key to leading a group of people is being consistent and being predictable, and not having those days where you fly off and because your organization is going to go as you go. And so yeah, I you know, I've struggled, I've been challenged, and but when we talk about place of belonging, APPA at that time, HEFF now, I've been here twice now, and it's very, very fun to be here. And so I would just say, if you can do anything as a leader, be consistent, provide stability for your reports and the people that work there. But more than anything, be who you are always. And with that, I'm going to take my coat off, because those of you that know me, this is really
you did not do that.
this is
We're
this
out
is
of
really
time.
how I
We're
roll.
out of time.
And so we're out of time. And so thank you for coming and allowing me to be a part
perfect way to
of this.
close it out, Jim.
So remember that how we treat people matters. You look so cute, Jim. What we say and do matters. What we don't say and don't do matters. I believe that we stand in a moment of great opportunity to humanize work. Let's do it together. Thank you, Jim. You're too funny. Thank you, Margaret. And Michael,
Well,
thank you.
Thank you, guys. Excellent discussion, and thank you very much.